Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Conversations in Ken's Cafe. We've got a special guest, Susan from the Hillbilly Chicken Ranch, on with us today. And we're going to be talking a lot about the homesteading and different things on homesteads that you can have. So, Susan, my audience really doesn't know you yet. So, if you can introduce yourself and give us a little bit of your background, please.
Well, I'm Susan. I am the Hillbilly Chicken Ranch. We live in West Tennessee. We raise chickens, turkeys, and ducks. We are homesteaders. We live on 1.5 acre lot in West Tennessee, kind of out in the country. And we live in a double wide mobile home. So we're really kind of hitting all the bases there. And I grew up knowing a little bit about country living, and my grandparents lived on a farm in a log cabin of all things. And so I've always loved farming and gardening and anything to do with the animals. Hey, I want to welcome in Broken Hearts Ministry Gail, Silly Lily, Aaron Dashing. Thank you for coming in.
Definitely. So we were talking a little bit before the show, and you were mentioning something that you had to do as a child, and that was actually go out and draw water from an old style well. How long did your grandparents have that well? And tell us a little bit about your experience with that you told me about on that.
Well, it was actually their second well. The first one dried up, and so they had moved one across the road from them. The first one was right outside the kitchen. They had no running water in the house. They did have the pull string lights. They lived in a log cabin. And I had to go out and draw water for them when I would go visit them. And so my grandparents had sent me over to draw some water to bring into the house. And I pulled up a snake, dropped the bucket back in the water, went screaming to my grandfather. He came out, he pulled the bucket up, got the snake out of the bucket, dumped the bucket out, dropped the bucket back in there, drew a fresh bucket of water and took it in the house. And that's what we had to drink.
Yep. And cook with and clean with and everything. It's amazing the conveniences that we have nowadays that, we just take for granted. But you grew up in being able to touch the old style farming. So what was one of the keys, do you think, that you learned from your grandparents on farming in that method?
I think was being self-resilient, being able to do things for yourself and take care of whatever it was needed to. My granddaddy would bring in the baby piglets into the house. He brought in baby squirrels one night. The mother had died. He found the nest. He brought the squirrels in. Some man broke down on the road and came up and knocked on the door in the middle of the night. My grandfather went for his overalls, pulled the overalls up, and of course all the baby squirrels were inside his overalls, and he was doing the dance of the squirrels, and this man is looking at him like he was crazy and ran away.
Oh, no, that is absolutely hilarious. Thank you for that. It's always a joy to laugh like that because I could just see him bouncing around in his overalls.
Yes. And of course, my grandmother, she quilted by hand. She had an electric sewing machine. It was an upholstery machine that she had. She sewed everything without a pattern. She made her own house shoes, her own clothes, she still wore the old bonnets out to the garden. She made me a bonnet when I was a child. And she canned everything. And the canning room was underneath the house where the chickens roosted. So everything had to be washed down before she could even open it up.
Yeah.
Jennifer and David Bryden, welcome in.
And Benny Ben and Victoria.
Welcome in. Welcome in. Let me get all these names down. I got David down. I need Jennifer. Victoria.
Yep. And now Nightbot, you said something about Nightbot, and I'm gonna have to check this out, guys. But if you guys are doing YouTube, this may be something that you want to look at as well. So I just wanted to you to give us a little bit of a hint on what Nightbot does, if you don't mind, Susan.
Well, right now it's welcoming in people. If you say hello, hi, or hey on my channel, it will pull up Nightbot. Hey, Tuber Chat, that's Kevin. Welcome in. And you can program it to do different functions. Like on my channel, if you drop the word hillbilly, it pulls up your link to your channel. So you can connect and grow that way. Or you can put in weather with your zip code and it will give you your weather report. And I also have it set up for some other little things. But if you do Nightbot, you want to make sure you turn off all the automated functions that's already in there, because you don't want to be putting people into timeout.
Yeah, I think that would be the one problem. I know we used to have to do that on the one channel I was working with. People were getting a little feisty and we'd have to put them into timeout, but then it's me making the choice, not an AI making the choice.
Yeah, Jennifer says it causes problems and it threatens her when she uses all caps. See, that's one of the functions I took off my channel. So if you want to use all caps on my channel, you can. A lot of people are afraid to use all caps because of that. I took that function off. And you can drop links. Like I've got a lot of links for open collaborations on my Nightbot that will be dropping throughout this. Hey, Christy, my neighbor.
Well, welcome, Christy. And if they get in, give you any trouble, just threaten another car running through the fence, okay?
Oh, yeah. And I also have one that I can put in that will tell me who's lurking. People that are not actually in the chat that are lurking, I can find out who they are. So a lot of fun things you can do with Nightbot as well. I'm really cautious about any kind of AI, but this one I trust because I kind of know the people that were behind it. So that was a good thing.
Well, yeah, knowing somebody that is, in the background and being able to trust that person is a big thing. Like that's where caring, sharing community, like, hi, Simply Jan. I'm on with her this afternoon, guys, by the way, but being able to trust the person that you're using their software is an amazing thing. And I appreciate your letting us know, because it's something that we can all use if we're doing YouTube at all.
Oh yeah, it's a great tool to have on hand, because I don't have. Sometimes I'll miss somebody. Well, at least Nightbot is responding to them, and it will. If you're saying hi to somebody, it's going to say hi to you a million times. Just to let you know, it's not perfect.
Yeah. Well, it's the thing is anything that gives help us to grow our communities, whether it's on my channel or any other channel, like Gail's, Susan's, etc. It's that interaction that's really a key to pushing out more of quality content and not just clickbait that we see a lot of times on YouTube.
Right. I really like it. I enjoy having it because I can put in links to different things. Like if I have a guest on my channel, I can put your link in there. It will drop the links every so often. It has a timer, so you can set a time for it to drop.
Cool. I like that, because I know I am not only a host, I'm a producer, and having something like that in the background to do it for me while I'm focusing on the conversation would make my life a lot easier.
Exactly. And y'all, right now, if you would share this stream out, whether you're on my channel or Ken's channel, share it out, because sharing is caring. That's how we draw more people in. Share it out on your social media so that we can get people from other platforms coming over to watch the live.
Yep, exactly. It's that community that's going to really make a difference in healing our planet as well as ourselves. Now, you raise a lot of chickens. That's why you're calling your channel the Hillbilly Chicken Ranch. So tell us a little bit about where you started on your property with chickens.
Well, we started down in Memphis. We had city hens.
Mm-hmm.
our city chicks. And one of our neighbors came over one day. There was a rooster outside her window, and she threw the rooster over in our yard thinking it was our rooster. And I said, well, we don't have roosters because we're in the city limits. Neighbor on my other side was Vietnamese, so I talked to him, and he took it down to their temple because there it would live out its life. It would never be eaten, and it would live out its life, and the city couldn't control it. It was on a religious property. So he lived there. He was like a little puppy dog. You could go over and pet him and love on him. He was a big rooster, and they absolutely were thrilled to get him. We raised hens down there. And then when we moved up here to where we're at now, we had to start all over again. And we went and bought our chickens and got our setup done. Our first hen house here was made out of 8 by 12 pallets.
Yep.
Big, heavy. It was like Fort Knox. Nothing would get in there. There was a question about how many chickens do we have. We have currently about 100, maybe a little bit more now because we got baby chicks.
Mm-hmm. And you've got a lot of baby chicks, and then you've got some broody hens. So tell the people a little bit about what a broody hen's going to do to you if you get too close to her chicks.
We have BB Reds, and they are extremely protective mamas. And if you walk in, they will puff up, and they will actually come at you with their feet first, trying to hit you to scare you away. I call them Kung Fu chickens.
Yep. I know they had the Kung Fu Panda, and I think he had a friend that was a chicken, didn't he? In the movie, I can't.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Kung Fu Chicken is right up the idea of mimicking nature really in a movie, because that's really what it is. The young of any species, the parent wants to protect that young because that's their offspring. We see it a lot even in a lot of different animals. But how are you managing to keep a cycle going with your chickens? Are you harvesting so often? Are you raising different types for different reasons?
We've harvested one batch of chickens. We wait until they're about 12 weeks old, and then we harvest them. But for the majority of them, they are just here to live out their lives and lay eggs. So we have the Banny hens. We have about 18 total Banny hens with 3 roosters in there. And then we have the rest of them are normal sized chickens with 1 rooster. We had 2 roosters, and 1 passed away recently. So he's got a lot of ladies to take care of. And we've got 2 baby Americana chicks in with the BB Reds that are older because they're a bigger chicken. And we're having to keep 2 brooders going right now because we're getting baby chicks every day. So as these chicks grow, we're going to be moving them over into the older pen. And then we have a pen, we call it the grow out pen. We just opened the gate up to allow them to go out with the rest of the chickens. So they've been being familiarized with the rest of the chickens so that they wouldn't be attacked once they got out there. So they have a pecking order, and you have to kind of play around with that to keep them from attacking one another. So they were in one section of our big pen, but safe from the other chickens. And some of the hens wanted to come over and visit with them. So we let the hens in there, and they took care of them until they got big enough to be out on their own.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the thing. They're taking care of them, and having them close together like that, they start to get used to the smell, the sounds, the movement, etc. And I think that helps with not getting chicks henpecked is the term. I know I tell my wife once in a while I'm getting a little henpecked, but that's something totally different. It's really off topic. But if you have a chick that's being overly aggressive, do you separate that adult bird, or are you more interested in saving the chick and having it accepted?
Well, we want them to be accepted, but a lot of people will separate them and put them into a separate pen. We don't have that capability right now because all our pens are being used. So we let them kind of fight it out amongst themselves to figure out who's going to be on top. Sometimes it gets pretty bloody. They can, they peck each other and they spur each other. So we have to kind of watch them. And if I catch the roos fighting, of course, I'm going to get in between them and I'm going to let them know that they're not going to fight, that I'm the big roo. So you have to kind of, take on their personality and kind of come at them the same way they're coming at the other chicken or rooster.
Yeah. Well, I know I raised dogs it's going on 16 years. We've raised Havanese, and the pecking order or being the alpha is really a key thing in any group of animals, whether it's wolves, dogs, or chickens, taking on that alpha role where there is that wall, that barrier. Then they start to understand that they can't do these things because the alpha is going to step in and make their life miserable if they're doing that. So
right.
Understanding that with a horse or a cow is one thing, but I never really looked at chickens as needing that alpha, but they definitely do.
Yeah, they do. They have their own personality. Each one of them has a personality.
Yep.
They're a lot of fun to raise, and they're like Lay's potato chips. You can't have just one. We go every year, and we cycle in new chickens every year, but we allow the older chickens to die out naturally, and then they get fed back to nature. I mean, this is just a cycle of life, and we've come to accept that. We even lose baby chicks, and it's hard, when you lose a baby chick. So, but we just cycle them out, and when they die naturally, they go back to nature, and they feed an animal out in the wild.
Yeah. And that's what's really needed is, to give back into the cycle of life. And that's what it is. It doesn't matter, what lives, what dies. It's always that cycle. And, if we look at it, like I'm all about the biology, it's right down into the very root of life itself. And at the cellular level, there's always that turnover of the natural in the environment, whether it's a chicken, whether it's a weed, the cycle needs to have those compounds, and each animal or plant adds compounds into the system. So I really appreciate that you're doing that, because it really helps the entire system. And if we're going to help our planet, we all need to look at, recycling everything that's possible to recycle. Now, I know you're very frugal. What are some of the things that you have created to help you recycle things on your farm?
I'll tell you that in just a minute. My husband's in the house. Hey, Hillbilly, welcome in. We buy things in bulk whenever we can. I mean, I buy my flour and my wheat germ and all, wheat, what do you call them? Wheat groats, all that stuff we buy in bulk. And I dry can everything that's dry goods, gets canned in jars. And then we shop the Amish community because we're all about the organic foods right now. We're trying to get away from anything in the stores because there's so much garbage in your food that they're putting out on the shelves, and it's making people sick. It's made me sick. I have autoimmune diseases, so I'm trying to reverse some of that. We buy our meat through a local farmer that raises cattle and pigs, so we are able to get fresh organic meat. We look for the alternatives. I can everything that I possibly can. If I can't can it, I dehydrate it or put it in the freezer. And we're constantly cycling through everything that we have in our household because of that. And I'm gardening. When you buy seed, you're saving money, because if you go and buy the plants, Bonnie plants this year were $6 a piece. We went down to the Amish community and paid 75 cents a piece for plants. Big difference in price. But if we save the seed from that this year, next year's plants are going to be free, and so is the produce. And see, God never intended for us to pay for our food. So that's ways that we save money. I do a lot of thrift store shopping. We will shop yard sales, thrift stores, estate sales for items that we want to put away for our preps and so forth. I shop the clearance aisle. I finally call it clearance and drive Walmart crazy. Where's clearance working today? Because I'll go in there and ask them that, just to be silly. And I'm looking for bargains everywhere I go. I refuse to pay full price unless there's absolutely no other alternative.
Well, I think that's something that a lot more people should be doing. We've become such a consumer society, and always new, where, the old adage, if it ain't broke, don't fix it, really comes into play when you're looking at living life, where you're not just, a source of using things, but you're able to recycle things. And you mentioned the autoimmune. Have you ever tried humic and fulvic acid to help with that? Just out of curiosity.
I haven't even heard of that. So that's something I'll have to get back with you, and you can tell me again what it is. I'm taking a lot of different things. I take alpha lipoic acid, oxbile. I take oxbile because I no longer have a gallbladder, and your body doesn't produce the bile that you need. So I'm doing a lot of things to try to help my body. But even the vitamins and supplements now have synthetics in them, and you have to know what you're buying. And your body does not absorb synthetics. Just telling you, you're wasting your money when your body won't absorb it. It's happening in our food. These box meals and stuff, they say it has thiamine and folic acid and blah, 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 and it's all synthetic, and it's doing you no good. People are getting obese because of this. There's hidden sugars in food, hidden salt in food. Your blood pressure's high. You don't know why. Look at your food. Of course, there are things environmentally that we can't control. We can't control that they're spraying glyphosates everywhere into our area. We can't control plastics. If they did our blood work and they checked for plastics or glyphosates, you'd be surprised how much you have in your body. Hey, Yellow Show Dad, welcome in. That's Mr. Gene.
Hi, Mr. Gene. So
he has the same name as my daddy.
Oh, cool. Oh, and there's Ghetto Hippie too, just popping in. Thanks for coming. Hey,
Ghetto Hippie.
So we have the microplastics in the Antarctic ice sheet in the north. It's around our world. We can't get away from it. That's where, there are biologies in our bodies and in our soils, if they're there, that actually do help to break that down. We've talked on the Soil Matters on how to actually take the biology and get rid of the glyphosate on your property. It's something as easy as finding, weeds at the edge of a really glyphosate rich field that are growing lush, taking those, stripping the dirt off, and using that as an extract to put the biology that is breaking down the glyphosate back into the soil structure. It's all boils down to, what you're doing, Susan, is giving the life in your soils by not putting that stuff on a chance to rebuild and get healthy enough that it can actually battle against that. And the humic and fulvic acid, you make compost, you're recycling a lot of your stuff. That's actually in your compost, but it can be extracted and we can drink it. And it actually helps balance us inside with our biology and what our bodies need. And I know we had Leah Oram on from Quad Ag. We actually have a discount code for her products, but she has autoimmune deficiency and she takes it every day and it helps a lot with her. So you might want to check out that particular Soil Matters podcast where we had her on talking about it.
I will definitely do that. One of the things, I live in a part of the country where we have commercial farmers and they farm all the way around our land.
Yep.
You know, we have just this one little 1.5 acre lot and they're out there spraying all the time and there's nothing we can do about it because, you know, when the wind blows, that spray is going to come at us. But we're trying to do everything in our power to limit what comes our way and to put into the soil, what needs to be put into the soil. And this year we used horse manure, organic horse manure, did a fantastic job growing with that with straw. Put straw in our raised beds, put the horse manure on top because 90% of my lot is sand. Can't grow anything but watermelons and cantaloupe over there, you know.
Yeah.
I want to welcome in. I think I missed somebody's name up there. Oh, it's Hillbilly Herb. I thought that was my husband, and his is Hilly Bill is my husband.
Okay.
Penny Pebble Ripples, welcome in.
Ripplers,
and
yep.
Heather with Milk and Honey Heritage Farms.
We've actually, I think I've got them booked for next month. I've got 4 shows booked already for next month for the Fridays, guys. So you'll have to keep, up on what's going on. But I know it's your writing, Susan. That's why I'll just keep chattering on while you're writing things down.
Yeah, for those that don't know, when you come through my lives, I give back watch time. That's why I write these names down. I may not be able to leave a comment for everybody, but I try to at least give you some watch time back. So sometimes I can't, sometimes I can. I do the best I can with my time. And I run playlist 24/7. I have a watch later playlist, and then I have a playlist too that I run, and I do them simultaneously sometimes. So the reason I do that is because I'm trying to help small channels and channels that are monetized that are struggling to keep those watch hours. So we're all in this game together, and that's why I do what I do.
Well, and exactly, it's all about caring, sharing, and community. And I'm so happy that there are people like you that are doing that to help each other. And if we all keep doing that, we all grow and succeed together. And that's a wonderful thing to, give back to the community that we're, helping to teach in some ways. Now, a lot of this community has a lot of knowledge that they're going to share in your chat, in my chat, and in other, chats around. But having that availability of knowledge, guys, in a chat is really important. So if you're following Susan or me or so many other channels, try to be on the lives and be in that chat and share your knowledge and understanding and help, all of the community grow and learn together.
Absolutely. And you never know what you're going to find out. I recently was at a political cookout, and one of the representatives from our state sat down at our table, and I was able to get in his ear. And one of the questions I asked him is, why are organic food so expensive and the garbage that they're putting on the shelves so cheap? And he says, the only thing I can tell you is they're wanting to push that product onto the consumer. And I said, well, it's killing us. What are y'all going to do about it?
Yeah.
I said, protect our state. What are you going to do about it? So hopefully with what I said to him will sink in, because I told him about the autoimmune diseases that I have and that both my daughters also share because they have the same thing. And I have grandsons that I'm concerned about because they're the next generation. Are they going to be able to have a good life because of this? We're seeing people dying younger and younger. We're seeing obesity like we've never seen before in our country. Hey, Serena, welcome in.
It's really, having them understand what is necessary in our soil systems and how they can help promote, health and vitality instead of, pushing laws that actually harm us. That's a tough sell for a lot of politicians until they actually have something that smacks them in the head in their life or someone really close to them. Then a lot of them seem to wake up and go, well, maybe I should have been looking at this before. But I really appreciate, Susan, what you're doing, talking to that politician to let them know, like, look, we do need to make changes. There are better ways.
Yeah, I told him, I said, we should never be paying for food in the first place. Grocery stores are not the answer. We need to get back to mom and pop. And I pushed the issue. I told him, I said, we need to get back to having home economics being taught in our schools again. And we need to get back to having Bibles placed in the history classes so that children can learn about the history of the Bible, not teaching that God exists, but teaching the Bible itself, even though I believe God exists. Hey, Midwest Outlaw 31.
And, the energy that exists, that is God, is our essence, is our soul, that's who we truly are. And these physical forms are mainly biology, to be perfectly honest, but we're here to experience, to grow and learn. And it's the values that are being taught in any of the Christian books that is really the base that humanity needs to be looking at. Don't kill people, don't steal from people, the basic things.
Yeah, welcome in, Garden State so-and-so. That's Miss Robin. In the Bible, it says that we are from dust to dust. We are made from dust and we will return to dust. Well, biology has taught man on a scientific scale that that's true, because everything that our body comes down to are minerals and organisms and stuff that is created in our soil. And so that's why grounding is so important, to get out there barefoot or get your hands in that soil and work that soil, because our bodies need that. They need that contact. And God created us that way. And so, over and over again, I could tell you many, many times over how the Bible has proved what science is telling us now. Yep. But it was said in the Bible thousands of years ago. And it's just, there's a lot of people out there that say it's a bunch of bunk. Well, to you it might be, but I still find a banana kind of interesting, how it's a package you can carry around with you. It comes in its own package. It fits perfectly in your hand. When you peel it, it points towards your mouth. I mean, only God can create something like that. And if we were a bunch of atheists, yep. And this is the question I've asked atheists over and over again. Well, why, if we came from monkeys, why isn't your offspring a monkey?
Exactly. Why are there these?
Or why didn't you have a cat? Why didn't you have a baby calf? Because we're just a hodgepodge of matter, floating around. So when we reproduce, why are we only reproducing humans? So, I mean, simplistic answer sometimes kind of baffles people. But I believe that whatever we're doing on this earth, we need to be putting back into the earth something good and not a bunch of garbage. That's why we go to the thrift stores and we recycle things that other people have thrown out, because we have become a throwaway society.
Very much.
You go to the stores and there's shelves and stuff, and they're just packed into these stores, and they're wanting you to sell it because it's eye candy, and you bring it home, you use it for a couple of weeks, and then you toss it because you don't want it anymore. Cooking utensils, they're using silicone and everything right now. Well, silicone will give you cancer. Plastics, again, that's another one. We've been using plastics for at least 40 years or more. And all of a sudden we know now that it's not healthy for us. I question every time they put something new out on the shelf in the kitchen section. I really do. I question it. Should I bring this home with me? Do I really need this piece of equipment? And there's stuff in my house now that I wish I could just throw out the door because it really is not healthy for us. Teflon, y'all remember the Teflon pans?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and how it was supposed to be, it won't scratch or peel. And it was a bunch of bunk, and it did peel, and it came off in your food. Plastic cutting boards puts plastic into your system. Drinking water out of plastic bottles. People don't even know how to use a spigot to get water from, you know, it's just craziness.
Yep.
Yeah. The food allergies. Hey, Smoking and G Sharp. Food allergies are definitely being caused by plastics, I do believe, among other things. And that's another issue is why all of a sudden are we having food allergies?
Mm-hmm.
And then why are we having food recalls at the same time?
You know, like I don't want to get into the conspiracy of it all, but there sure is something going on somewhere way up the top of the corporations because, you know, those people aren't stupid. They do the scientific testing. They pay the scientists to tell you what they want you to know, not necessarily what the truth is. That's part of the problem of why governments are allowing this stuff in our foods. You know, like I know when I was 5-6 years old, they found out I was allergic to a lot of the preservatives that were being put in the foods back in the 60s at the beginning of this. And, you know, now we're seeing all of these autoimmune diseases. We're seeing, you know, so many childhood ailments that were never even thought of before because of this stuff. And we're still being the long-term study on how this stuff is affecting us. And that's where, you know, Susan, you were talking to the politician about changing those things. And those are the conversations we really need to have with people that we can influence or become the person in that seat writing the laws. I think that's the only way, in a lot of ways, things are going to be changed.
Yeah, we're our own best judge of what is good for us. I want to welcome in Midwest Outlaw 31, Philly Boy, and Monkey Man Productions. Thank y'all for coming in. Yeah, we are our own best source and resource for our own health. And you have to get back to the basics. I can't express it enough. We have to get back to simple eating clean, healthy foods, raising your own food if you have to, and being willing to take that risk of learning something new, a skill that you wish you didn't have to learn. I didn't want to have to cull chickens to eat, but we learned it. We learned how to do it. We started with rabbits. That was even worse because rabbits are cute, fuzzy critters.
Yeah, they are.
And until one of them bites you.
They're not so nice anymore. Ninja rabbits now. Okay.
We raised
Maybe something to do with you, Susan. All these animals going ninja on you.
Well, we raised rabbits, but you have to keep the males separated from the females. Yep. We had one that we couldn't tell if it was a male or a female. We were told it was a female. We put it in with the females, and the next thing we know, we had rabbit math going on.
You had massive rabbits.
Yeah, Thumper can be dangerous, and the males get very aggressive when they're mating. So, yeah, they'll bite you.
Well, I think that's pretty much any male that gets a little aggressive when it's that time, you know. But, you know, so you've had rabbits, chickens. What other animals have you been raising?
Well, we have 2 rescue dogs. We have a rescue cat. We have 2 turkeys right now. One of them's a turkey poult. We have an older hen. We're hoping the poult is a tom so that we can get baby turkeys to put in the freezer. We have ducks. We raise ducks. I don't eat ducks personally, but my husband will. I don't care for the duck meat myself, but we harvest the eggs Duck eggs and turkey eggs are equivalent to one chicken egg. They're great for baking with. And we have customers that actually want duck eggs and turkey eggs. So we're filling in a gap, in society. You go to the store, it's chicken eggs. That's all you can get.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing. Like, there's a lot of people that like duck eggs and turkey eggs, and if they're not available or nobody can, bring them in, then those people are going, well, where can I get these? And filling in that gap for your community is a very wonderful thing that you're doing, giving back. So you also have gardens as well. Are you feeding any excess to your chickens, or how are you feeding your chickens or your animals? Are you using grains that you grow, or how are you doing that?
We actually have found a place that we can get grain that's mixed in the store. And so we go and purchase that. And then we are supplementing wheat, not wheat, oats and black oil sunflower seeds into that. But they do get table scraps. They get scraps from the garden. If we get out there and there's something that the bugs have gotten to, or a critter has been eaten on, we toss it to the chickens. They eat it. They'll eat just about everything you put in front of them. You just have to be careful with a few foods. Like I don't give them onions. I don't give them raw beans. I don't give them green tomatoes or the tomato plants. Nightshades are not good for them, so they don't get any of that unless it's cooked or it's ripe. They can have ripe tomatoes, so they'll get that. Okay. And it's funny to watch them fight over a cherry tomato. They play football with a cherry tomato. It's hilarious. And we do occasionally give them some yogurt, although they don't absorb it like they should, but it does help with the calcium. And they'll have a sling fest out there, and you have to stand back, and it's another laugh fest because they're out there slinging yogurt at each other.
Now that's the ultimate in what I call a food fight.
Yeah. So we find all of our fun in our backyard, y'all. Hey, Adenir, welcome in.
So tell us a funny story that you can remember from your youngest days that you found on the farm that just made you want to roll on the ground and laugh.
Well, I have to say, my granddaddy bringing the baby piglets into the house. We went up there and he had 6 baby piglets in the house. Of course, my grandmother was fussing because they're in the house. They weren't supposed to be. And he's out there loving on them and playing with them, and they're just squealing and having a ball. And he looks at me straight in the face, and he says, they're going to be on the dinner table in about 6 months.
Yep. Man, practical. You're giving them love now, and they're going to love you back in 6 months.
Right.
Yep.
But that was one of them. And then my horror story as a child was I went to one of my grandmother's houses, and she had a rooster that was mean. And this thing flogged me and chased me all over the yard. And I came in the house crying. She says, don't worry about it. He'll be gone when you come back. So we went back about 6 months later, and she had fried chicken on the table, and they were telling me that was that rooster, and I bawled. I wouldn't eat. I'm like, I can't eat that rooster. And then they told me on the way home, she gave it to a neighbor. Well, why could you tell me that at the dinner table when there was fried chicken on the table?
Now I'm hungry, dang it.
But she also had a cherry tree, and we'd go up there, and pick cherries because it was just loaded. And we came home with one of those styrofoam coolers full of cherries, and I'm in the back seat, and I'm real quiet going home. And when we got home, there was half the cherries gone.
Yep.
I had ate all those cherries. I had a tummy ache the next day, but I loved it.
Yeah, and we know what your poop color was the next day too,
Oh, yeah. My mother was so mad because she had planned on making cherry jam out of that, and, cherry preserves and stuff. And I done ate half the crop.
Well, maybe she got some jam out of it, but the preserves just didn't happen.
Yeah. But I was a tomboy when I was a kid. I played all my kids' friends were boys, so I played cowboys and Indians with them, and they'd bring out their GI Joes, and I'd bring out Barbie. We'd go on a date.
Why not? You learn young, you know.
And it was always fun because we had a fig tree in our backyard. We had grapes in our backyard, blackberries, an apple tree. It was the sour apples, you know, one real good apples to eat. And I found a patch of asparagus back there. We had poke salad. Mother could literally walk outside and pick anything she wanted to. And she actually started gardening because I came home from school. We had grown a pea in a little one of those little Dixie cups or something like that. And I went out in the backyard and planted it. And then I went in the house and found some popcorn, planted that. And I found a potato that had roots on it, you know, starting to form. And I threw it in the ground, and she came out and she says, "Where'd this come from? I recognize that plant." I said, "I planted it." Mm-hmm. That next spring, we were out there hand digging and removing plugs of grass from the garden area and planted a garden. And from that time on, she gardened, and we put up food every year. So it was a real great learning experience for me.
Well, and it gives you the base knowledge and understanding from very young on how to grow and preserve, etc. It's really lacking in the education. That's where, you know, home economics is something that we really do need to start teaching, and we need to start teaching how to survive without being able to go to the grocery store. There's kids out there that don't even know that, you know, food comes from a farm. They just go, well, why don't these farmers just go to the grocery store to buy their food?
Right.
I just don't understand.
Well, we would go to the farmer's market. And back then, the farmer's market in Memphis, you could buy bushels of whatever vegetable you want. Now you get to buy the little pints or quarts. They don't sell the bushels anymore. And Mother would go down there before she started gardening, and she would put everything up in the freezer. And of course, I was little. I was absorbing all of this. And I remember her pouring paraffin on the preserves and leaving it sit on the table. And if it had a little mold on top, you just scooped it out and you went ahead and ate it anyway. We didn't know back then what we know now, that that's not good for you, but it didn't kill us.
Well, and in a lot of ways, you think of how penicillin, you know, come about. It's a mold. So is that mold on top of that filling actually, you know, right down into it, or just taking it off and throwing that out and using the rest is perfectly fine? Cheese is a mold. So if you have mold on your cheese, it's the bacteria that made the cheese in the first place.
Yeah. Soft cheese, you don't eat the mold on, but a hard cheese, you can cut that mold off and you can still eat the cheese. Just things that we had to learn over years. Hey, LSP, the freckle-faced artist, welcome in.
So it's one of those things that, you know, it's a knowledge base. It's like going out and harvesting mushrooms, you know, from your local environment. If you don't know what mushrooms are what, you better not be doing that. But if you have that expertise to go out and find the food that grows naturally in your area, then, you know, that's better. But it's like with everything, it's, you know, that 80-20 rule of, you know, don't take more than 20% of that natural resource from the animals, you know, just leave more than you're taking.
Exactly. And to put back something, you know, it's like harvesting trees. If you take one tree down, you need to plant two, because one of them may not come up. Speaking of mushrooms, my only experience with gathering wild mushrooms is if it has worms around it, it's edible. If it doesn't, it's not.
That's interesting. I'll have to talk to some of my mycology guys and see, you know, just how if that really would be a way to tell, because I would never want to say that to somebody and have them, you know, get sick. But that's been your experience all your life?
Well, I was taught by an Italian lady when I lived in upstate New York, and that's what she told me. She says, if it doesn't have worms around it, you do not want to eat the mushroom. It's going to be poisonous and make you sick. But if it has worms there, it's perfectly edible. So I'm going by what she told me, and she had been doing it for about 50 or 60 years at that point. So
Cool.
she knew what she was talking about.
Well, I'm
But
sure
I don't know enough about foraging them myself, so I don't forage them. I wish I could. But I do plan on getting a book on foraging mushrooms because we do have some varieties that grow here, and I would like to go out and forage some. I want to know more about foraging the wild edibles that we have growing, like purslane. The wild lettuces I have to be careful of because I have a latex allergy, and a lot of them contain the latex in them, so I can't eat that. But it's interesting to know that we've got all this other life form that we can be harvesting and putting into our households that's not going to cost us anything but a little time.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know a part of wild crafting is, bringing or from my aspect is bringing the biology that it is existing in that area you're harvesting from home and making an extract out of that and adding that biology into your soil structure and your plants, because it's all about biodiversity. The more roots you have in the soil, the more energy is going to be put in the soil, the healthier your plants are going to be. So that biodiversity, and if you're going out and wild crafting, whether it's a berry or an apple, whatever you're wild crafting, if you take a little bit of the leaf duff from under that, you can bring that home and grow that particular biology that existed there and add it into your soil system. Are you doing any compost teas or extracts or anything like that for your gardening side?
Actually, no. I use banana peels. I put banana peels out. I'll take the eggshells and I'll dry them out and grind them up. I put them out. I use Epsom salt. I do use a natural fertilizer that will kill grubs, but it also greens up everything it touches. I learned this from a lady from Hawaii that lived down in Memphis. It is half, you get your spray bottle that goes on your hose. Half of it is lemon ammonia. The other half is lemon dish detergent, and you spray. You can green up your grass. It's great for roses. But I started spraying it on my vegetables, and we had bumper crops of vegetables from this because the ammonia turns to nitrogen. And you don't have to use it but once a month.
Yeah.
And it turns to nitrogen. So it boosts, the soap sticks to the leaves so the bugs and the worms don't want to eat anything. So I do that. One of the old-timey things that I remember my mother doing was she would put a penny nail down by her tomato plants.
Okay.
That was to keep the slugs and the worms off her tomatoes. And of course, they used to say it put iron back into your tomatoes, which, that probably wasn't true. It probably put other metals in there that we didn't know about, but they did that. I use plastic forks or metal forks in some of my garden beds to keep the varmints out. We use a lot of cages, but I don't do a lot of the teas and stuff here. I want to learn more about them. But I've always had a green thumb, so I've never really had to turn to that kind of stuff. But here on this property, I have fought tooth and nail to get something to grow, except for that one little 10% of the property strip, which is extremely fertile. We had rabbits, we had chickens and ducks, and so everything where we had their pens at, when we move their pens, we plant, and everything grows.
Yeah.
We had okra one year that looked like trees in our backyard. Literally, they were 15 to 20 feet high, and I'd have to get on a ladder to get all the okra down.
So are you doing composting or just chop and drop, or what are you doing with the refuse at the end of the year?
We usually do chop and drop, but we've got plastic laid down. So this year we're going to try to set up compost bins. And one thing about the horse manure was it had biochar in it. It had live microbes. You could actually see some of the microbials in it. It was full of earthworms. just full of earthworms. So we knew it was a good, healthy soil to be using. And the man that had sold it to us had been turning it for 2 years.
Mhm.
So all the heat was out of it. So we knew that it wasn't going to burn our plants. You can go to the store and buy cow manure and have it burn your plants. We had a friend that used cow manure faithfully every year and would let it sit for a year before they'd use it. And they put it out and they planted their okra seeds in there, and the okra plants came up, beautiful plants. Pull it out of the ground, there was no root system on it. It had burned the roots off of it. So, and it had a urine smell. So if it has a urine smell, you know that it's still hot. You don't want to use it.
Yeah, if it's got that nice earthy smell, like the forest floor, then it's good to use. But even people that are using straw on their gardens, if you're not absolutely 100%, the fact of there's no spray or chemicals on that straw, if you use it in your garden, you can set your plants back and literally kill all your plants because of the herbicides, pesticides that are there. And you're just using straw, but that's part of the knowing the community you're dealing with, where you're getting the stuff, your inputs from. And if you're not sure before you use an input, you can always send it to the lab and have it tested to make sure. Or if you really want to get into it, buy yourself a cheap $300 microscope, and you can look at what you're putting on that amendment before you put it on. If it's full of life, then you're pretty safe to put it on.
Right. And we do.
You had rabbit doo-doo.
We have a straw bale garden going right now that has pepper plants in it. And I use a low number fertilizer on it and a lot of water to get it started. And you'll see the heat coming off of it. And once it starts growing mushrooms, it's time to plant. And it is literally falling apart now, but I've got the best bell pepper crop I've had in years. And pimentos. I planted pimentos for the first time this year. So I'm getting a great crop out of that. And I can turn that back into the compost bin or soil next year. And so we're going to I don't have a lot of table scraps to throw out there because our chickens eat everything, but they're fertilizing the rest of the yard for me.
Yep. Well, and like you were saying, you move your chicken tractor or however your bin or bin, and then you plant in that next year. They've really revitalized that soil. You're going to get so much more out of that the next year because they've processed it for you. They've scratched that surface. Like a lot of people talk about till and no till, but scratching the surface, is very important. That's why animals in farming were so important because when a cow or a buffalo stepped on the ground, they'd actually break that surface. But you don't need to till down, more than, an inch, just to break up the organic material to make it easier for the biology to break it down to feed to your plants.
Right. But, and your grass clippings and your leaves.
Yep.
They will mulch down and you can use that on your garden.
Organic material.
And so what we did last year was we have a big field on one side of our house that is sandy soil. So we brought in soil and manure and worked it into that soil.
Yeah.
Trying to build it up. We were planning on planting over there this year, but we didn't do it. So my husband's going to fence it off so the chickens can't get in there anymore. And this year we're going to go and we're going to find leaves, as many leaves as we can, and put about an 8 to 10 inch bed of leaves in that area to try to allow it to break down in that area, and throw in some earthworms that we dig up and whatever else we can to get it growing. I told him a layer of straw on the bottom and then the leaves on top ought to do the trick.
Yep.
Just to get that top layer of soil with all the microbes and everything that we need to grow in, because it is nothing but sand. I can go out there and pull up shells all day long. See, little seashells. Um,
Well, one good thing if you want to take a little bit of time is take a 5 gallon bucket, put it half full of water or 3/4 full of water, take weeds, etc., from your local environment, stuff them in there, put a rock on top, and then just let it sit there for several weeks until that really breaks down. It starts to bubble. You'll see a
yeah,
foam on top. Take that, dilute it with water, spray that down on top of your leaves and your straw. That's adding the biology that does break that down, those materials down. You're giving it that extra boost, and it'll actually break down that much faster and be much better to plant in next year.
yeah. So you'll be fermenting whatever you're
Yeah.
putting back in there. So yeah, it becomes like a very strong tea, and you
Mhm.
would have to water it down to spread it out
Oh, yeah.
because at that point it would burn your plants if you put it on there straight. Um, we, watermelon rinds,
Mhm.
any kind of rinds that we have left over gets thrown out. What the chickens don't eat it decomposes out there. So
Yeah.
everything is going to be composted back into the earth at some point. And I'm so thankful for the worms that's in this horse manure because we are planning on going and getting more of that and putting in that section as well and getting it tilled in.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah, to try to add to that. Um, so I'm still learning. I mean, I've been doing this since I was a kid, but I'm still learning this. Hey, Mad Dog, welcome in. Um, I'm still learning. I'm 62. I'm still learning, y'all.
Well, it's like what Christine says here. When I first started composting and saw mycelium, I thought I had done something wrong, but that's when you really know your compost is really done because that's the fungal side of it. And you don't get the fungal side until the bacteria has been broken down and into its components till your compost has cooled down. You can't get the later stages of biology that you need. That's when you really know that compost is done. When I was younger, when a farmer was finding mushrooms in his field, when they were switching from conventional to organic, they're going, yeah, now I have life in my soil.
Yeah, when you see the mushrooms, you know you have life.
Yep.
Because that's one of the first signs. It doesn't mean you can eat those mushrooms, but you got life there. But when I pulled up a handful of this horse manure and it would clump together in my hand, I knew it was good soil.
Yeah.
Because sandy soil just runs through your fingers. And there's a couple of ways to tell if you have good soil or not. You can take a soil sample from your yard, put it in a glass jar, shake it up, and just leave it on your counter and sit. And you will be able to tell if you have silt or you have sand. Really easy.
Well, it'll actually show silt, sand, and clay in your jar, and it's the different levels, and then you can actually quantify how much of each is in your soil, because a mix of sand, silt, and clay is actually very important. So you have a sand to start with, you need to get more of the clay and the organic material into that sandy soil, and that's going to literally start with adding the organic material, because the biology is actually going to be able to stitch the sand particles together to make more of a clay particle. It's just a different size of particle.
Well, the sand will filter the water.
Yeah.
So you want to have that sand in there. The silt is the growing matter, and then of course the clay kind of holds it all together. When I lived in Memphis, we had clay, so I knew how to grow in that. When I came here, I'm like, this is all sand. What am I going to do with this? Because I had no clue. And everywhere I've lived, I've always had a good amount of clay. So I never had problems gardening until I moved to this property. It was just really weird.
Yep. And it's different growing in a sand or a lot of sand soil to, a mix of a sand loam, or, going into the hard clays. Your water penetration is different, and knowing your particular farm, or what we call terroir, your environment, is really important for what you're doing in your backyard or on your farm, and learning the different ways the water moves through your soil is a great component to start to understand if you're homesteading or when you start your homestead, what you want to look for in land. Did you guys look at the hydrology or local hydrology or way the water moves on your farm, or is that something that you're looking at?
All we knew when we bought this property was we were sitting on top of an aquifer.
Cool.
So we knew the water was good. We didn't really pay that much attention to the actual dirt and everything, because at that time we weren't thinking about gardens and everything else. We were thinking about we have a place to live, because I mean it was a big move for us to make that decision to move away from all our family, move out to the country. And so we were thinking we got a house to move into. And then everything else we have to work with. And so when I told him I wanted a garden again, he was like, okay. And so we went out and started looking at the soil. And that's when we discovered 90% of the yard was sand, but we had this one little strip by our driveway, going all the way back that we could plant in. So that's where, and at that time, that's where he had the chicken coop at. And I told him a chicken coop's got to go because this is the only good soil we have. And we literally had a bumper crop the first year we planted in that area. We let it rest for a year and then we planted. And so with chicken manure, it's high nitrogen, so you have to let it sit. Cow manure is another one. Horse manure is another one. You have to let it sit. Rabbit manure, though, you can plant in it all day long, and you can plant in duck manure all day long. Will not burn your plants. So you have to know, is your manure hot or not? Yeah.
It's just like alpaca is another cold manure as well.
Right. My mother would throw out her tea leaves and her coffee grinds into the garden. It always went in the garden, never failed. Eggshells went into the garden. So I learned a lot of things about that. I was really interested when I found out about the Epsom salts, because it gives magnesium and so many other benefits to your plants that your plants need to thrive and grow fruit. And if your leaves are turning yellow on your plants, it's more than likely low in magnesium. Didn't know that. I learned something new this year. I knew it was good for soaking your feet, but I didn't know about that. Yep. And so give your plants some magnesium. Don't spray them. If you're going to spray them, don't spray them during the day, but spray them at night, because they'll absorb it through the leaves, just like we absorb it through our skin.
Mm-hmm. Well, and people don't realize that we actually get a lot of nutrients coming through our skin, from the environment around us, and also through the water that we bathe in. You're getting that in through the skin. But do you use a soil tester? Do you have somebody that you would like to recommend doing something?
I actually have a soil tester. I couldn't tell you the name of it. I haven't even used it, but I would go to my local extension office and get them to test the soil. You probably get a better understanding of what your soil might need.
Yeah. Now, if you want to take it to the next level, you can also get a biological test, from somebody that knows, a little bit more about, that end of it. I actually have, I think it was Alluvial Soil Labs out of California. I have a discount code on my discount page on my website. But they actually do both soil test and a biological on your soil. And we've got other people that you can reach out to if you really want to go in depth in that end of it. Just reach out to me and I'll let you know some of the better people that there are available out there.
Yeah, Hillbilly Herb wants to know, how many chamomile flowers do I need for a cup of tea? I have no clue. I would say probably a teaspoon of dried flowers, but that's just me. And I have a diffuser that I use, and I usually fill my diffuser up and make enough tea for a quart.
Victoria wanted to know what is the ratio for the Epsom salts to water that you're using?
I think it's 1 tablespoon of Epsom salt to 1 gallon of water. If I may be off on that because it's been a while since I looked at it. But you can also add in some dish soap in that to keep the bugs from chewing on the leaves and spray it.
Now, dish soap, just to let you guys know, the dish soap is acting what's called a surfactant, and it's spreading the molecules of water apart as well as having them stick. And you can use yucca, aloe vera. There's a lot of different surfactants. Soap nuts will do the same thing. So when you're doing a foliar spray, it's important to have a surfactant in there so that it does grip on the leaves and stay where the biology can suck it right in the cells right at the leaf structure instead of just running off.
Right. Yeah, we're going to be doing a I can't think of the name of it. Home apothecary.
Yeah, now you got me saying it wrong. Apothecary.
Yeah, one of those collabs is coming up in August, and I'm excited to do that. Some of the questions coming through here, y'all might want to be watching that because you may learn some things. I'm going to be learning. I'm going to be participating, but I'm going to be learning it as well. Don't ever give up on learning, folks, because it's so important. I've got books and books and books. As a matter of fact, let me go grab a book real quick.
And yes, Christine, aloe vera can be used as a rooting hormone as well. There's many different things that we don't think about when we're gardening that, you know, the old timers knew all this stuff. So they would throw the fish in the bottom of the hill for their potatoes. You know, they dig down extra deep, throw a fish in, cover it up with some soil, and throw their potato on top. And they'd have bumper crops of potatoes. We don't do those kind of things anymore. But so you got your book there, Susan?
Yes. It's Regenerating Farms and Gardens. And this book, we picked it up at a Mennonite Amish store. Mm-hmm. It's written by Devon Miller. And this book is a wealth of information. I'm reading through it. I'm about halfway through. I have learned so much about gardening that I didn't know just from reading this book. Amazing, amazing information in here. And they do talk about the soil biology and different things. It's really an interesting book. Here's the little flyer that came inside.
Let me just bring you up big screen here. Okay.
And I'll show you the other side because it talks about the animals, how important the animals are in the soil also.
Yep. You need that manure.
Yep. So it's really an interesting book. Right now, I think I'm in the grazing part where the animals are actually grazing and what they do. Mm-hmm. And then it talks about the aquaculture. So it gets into the water as well. Yep. And we need it all. We need the air, the oxygen. The plants need, you know, what we breathe out is what the plants breathe in. So it's all alive. We're all alive on this planet. Isn't that amazing?
Oh, exactly. And it all is working in a synergistic relationship from the very smallest creature on our planet to the largest creature on our planet. It's all the same base biology that runs the entire cycle. You know, from life to death to being broken down and given back into the system. That's why you're giving your chickens back to the system, which I'm so happy that you're doing things like that and teaching other people that, you know, they can be doing those things as well.
And I really want to reach the young people because they do not know. Our young people have their heads in these games, you know, all day long. They have no outside life. They don't know what life is all about. Hey, Super Nessa 83. Thank you for coming in. If I missed anybody in the chat, forgive me because we're watching two different chats at once. So
yep.
Kind of hard to keep up.
I'm watching one chat and I'm having a hard time keeping up some days.
Yeah.
So go Super Nessa actually does deep water culture, which is growing in water. He uses tree sap. So he harvests tree sap, and that's what he's using as the nutrient to feed his plant. He's finding some absolutely fantastic results.
Yeah, that's interesting. One of the things in this book, I knew about beans. They call them legumes.
Yep.
Have a natural ability to fix the nitrogen from the atmosphere into your soil. So I do a lot of companion planting. So beans would be a good companion plant with a lot of different things. I think I've got them out there with squash, and I've got them out there with cucumbers. And it's just a great plant to plant alongside. And then basil is really good with tomatoes, and so are marigolds because it keeps the boogies away.
The French marigold is better than the normal marigold for by your tomatoes.
Right.
Yeah.
And then I marked so many things in this book already. It was just unreal what I was reading, talking about how much actual calcium is in limestone, and a lot of our soil is limestone. Did y'all know that? Our soil is actually rocks that have been grinding through the earth for millions and billions of years. And so when we get to that really fine soil and sand is usually the sea creatures that have been ground up. So when you have sand, silt, and clay, you're getting such a good biology in that combination. But I was just excited to read these things and know, well, this is what that means. Because, I grew up with my grandparents were farmers. My mom raised a garden, and here I am gardening at my age. Hey, the Bud Files, welcome in.
Well, and the thing is that sand, silt, clay, and organic material, because it's different biology that lives in the organic material. There's different biology that mines the clay, the silt, the sand. It's all different levels of biology. And it's that soil food web idea of the different layers of predator to prey. And your predators are living in, say, the sand, and your prey is living on the silt. But if you have one that's not there, you can't end up with the other one. It's has to work together. It's got to have that jungle attitude of give and take, and life is life, and it has to recycle itself.
Exactly. And Jan said limestone is a natural filter for water. It absolutely is. Mm-hmm. There are 2 tests that you can do with household products to tell if your soil is alkaline or if it is acid. One is you use vinegar, and one you use baking soda. If it's alkaline, it bubbles with vinegar. And if it's acid, it bubbles with baking soda. Simple test that you can do, and it didn't cost you anything.
Well, exactly. And I know in some of the indoor growing that they're starting to use their horizontal soil system, they're wanting to test the rock to make sure that it doesn't have that alkalinity, because that's not what they want in that zone of building a soil structure. But that's totally way out in left field. That's all indoor stuff. But do you do a greenhouse at all or anything like that?
We have all the windows. We're going to build a greenhouse. We were hoping to get it done this spring, but it didn't happen. But we will be doing one hopefully by next year, maybe this fall. I would love to have a winter garden in a greenhouse. Serena asked a question. I want to talk about that. My cherry tomatoes are producing, but big tomato plants are only just blooming, and it's about to get hot here next week. 101 degree temps and going up to 103. Should I use shade cloths on those days? If your plants are indeterminate, meaning that they are vining, you probably won't need a shade cloth on them. If they are determinate, you may want to put a shade cloth on them, although I didn't do that this year, and I had temps up to 114 degrees as a heat index. What I did was make sure that I watered them very well at night so that they would have plenty of moisture in that root. You can also put a ground cover over the ground
Mulching it.
Mulch it. That will reduce the temperature in the soil, and the roots will not get as hot, and that helps the plant. So
And
that's
it helps hold the moisture in the soil.
Yeah, it holds the moisture in, but it also lowers the temperature of the soil. So if you have a good mulch on around those plants, you can use pine needles, you can use straw, you can use mulch, you can use the leaves if you have leaves, just something to put around them. Now, you may want to take the pine needles away because that's really acidic. I think that's the one that's acidic.
Yeah, they're acidic on the surface, but I talked to a lot of different arborists, etc. And once they actually start to be incorporated into the soil, that acidity is actually come out of them. That's part of the process of breaking them down. So just having them on top isn't a problem. Just don't incorporate them into your soil. It's like wood chips. If you incorporate fresh wood chips into your soil, they're going to take the biology, the nitrogen your plants need. So you would have them on top is fine. Just don't mix them in.
Yeah. Chrissy says she thinks she has more clay than I have. But compost is good for clay or sand. Yeah, it is good for either one. But you want a loose soil, but you want it to be able to compact. In other words, it'll hold the water. When you squeeze it in your hand, it clumps up. That's been my experience anyway. My grandfather could go out in a field and tell you if the soil was good to plant in or not. I mean, he was just an amazing person.
Well, if you can take a piece of stick and you can poke it into the soil, your soil is pretty good to plant in because it's got the fluff, the volume where your roots can go down. Where if you take that stick and you try to stick it in and it just breaks, no, you don't want to plant into that because the water can't get into that soil, the roots can't move in that soil. So, and then look at the plants that are there, my friends. Look at what's there. If you got a lot of dandelions, you know you've got probably two problems: lack of calcium, and your soil's impacted. It's too tight. That root is trying to break it apart. So, yeah, I have no lack of belief in your grandfather being able to look at a field, walk across, and go, "Yep, this is good soil. Let's plant here."
Yeah. I mean, he was just amazing. And he had 365 acres down in Mississippi. He was just an amazing person.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to ask you a question and then it just totally left me.
Sorry, I got yapping. Oh,
That's
darn.
okay. That's okay. But I have a lot of gardening books, y'all, and I want to be able to sit down in the wintertime, in the winter months when we're on our downtime, and really plan out next year's garden so that some of the problems that I had this year doesn't occur next year. This year we have had bugs, inchworms, we've had little caterpillars, those squash bugs, we had all kinds of things going on. And I'm like, I've never dealt with these. I've never had these problems. A lot of it, I think, was coming from the horse manure. I wasn't sure, maybe there was some things in there growing, eggs and stuff that I didn't know about. But next year, I'm hoping that our garden will be 100% productive. This year, it was about 80%, which isn't bad. We lost some things that I planted, didn't do anything. And right now, we've got cantaloupe, we got watermelon, and we've got pumpkins growing, and they're taking over the back half of the back half of the back half.
Yep. Well, and you have so much of those pumpkin leaves are so huge that you don't need to have a mulch so much under there. You can't have companion planting in there because their leaves just kill everything off, right?
So what I did with that area is I have fire rings that we use as raised beds and plant stuff in that as a companion. So hopefully it'll draw the bugs to the fire rings and they'll leave everything else alone. But right now I have got a bumper crop of all three of them growing. The one thing about the pumpkin is I've got one mound of the pumpkins is about 3 or 4 feet high. and it's spread over at least 8 to 10 feet of our garden space back there. I don't have to worry about shading those plants. It's already shaded. It's great.
Yeah, exactly. So do you know why, and I'm going to, a quick question, strawberries, do you know why they're called strawberries?
Because you plant them with straw.
Well, you use the straw underneath them so the berries never touch the ground. As soon as the berries touch bare soil, they start to actually break down. But yeah, that's exactly why they were called strawberries. Was putting that straw in with them, and that it's that organic material again. That's the one of the most important keys people need to understand is organic material is so lacking, and it's where the biology lives. It's what the biology breaks down to make more biology, plus make the cells of your plant. So keep mulching, keep mulching, keep mulching.
Absolutely. And get free mulch wherever you can, as long as it's organic.
Yep.
I want to welcome in sweet Melissa. That's she was formerly known as Coastal Girl. So thank you for coming in. Thank you, Robin. She says she loves hearing stories about people like my grandfather. Yeah, he was an amazing man. He was very funny. He was also a Baptist pastor. I didn't know this until his death. I was surprised by that. But my grandmother would talk about the Baptist pallets in the church, with all the babies on the pallets in the church. The quilts would be laid out. And she had 8 children, so I'm sure she carried a quilt with her every Sunday for years.
Yeah, I'm sure, yep. So you didn't even know your grandfather was a pastor until he passed?
No, I did not. I had no clue. I knew that they went to church, but he never really shared that part of their life. And it was in his obituary, and I was like, wait, I didn't know that.
Yep. Well, it's amazing that you actually found out, because sometimes you don't know what you don't know if your grandparents have passed and you never got to, learn those stories. It's a wonderful thing that, he was there so strong in that faith and never had to really tell you about it because you were strong in your faith already.
Right. Well, he probably didn't, because I was so strong in my faith. I mean, I grew up in the church. My parents were faithful. They took me to church. And my grandparents and my aunts and uncles all took me to church. They would read the Bible to me. My mother would sit me on her lap and read the Bible to me. They would serenade me with the old gospel songs. And, that was just part of life. I didn't know anything different.
Well, exactly. And I appreciate that, that most people back in the day before, your schools, etc., the Bible was the, teaching book. And it wasn't just to teach you about the words that were in it. It was to teach you how to spell and read, etc. It was that core understanding, because almost everybody on the frontier had that Bible, and
That's how they learned to read, and that's how I learned to read.
Exactly. And your mother sitting there with you on the lap, teaching you about that, and the stories and the anecdotes that are in the Bible. There's some stuff in there that'll make you roll on the ground in laughter, as much as breathing brimstone and fire in the Old Testament.
Mm-hmm. There was a question about strawberries above, growing from seed, and she said she was 56 days in, and she did cold stratify them, and there's nothing. I don't know about growing from seed strawberries. I know about growing from plugs, because that's what we do down here. But what I do with my strawberries that are starting to go bad is I would just stick them directly into the soil, because next year you're probably going to have a good crop. So I wouldn't worry too much about the seed, but just keep an eye on them and keep them watered.
Well, it's just like most vegetables you buy in the store, whether it's green onions, you can replant and they will grow. But you can start, a pineapple tree from the top end of the pineapple, eat the rest, put the the top in the soil, and it's actually going to start growing. There's so much we can do that we don't do. Starting from seeds, a lot of the time is there's a biological problem in the soil. You're too moist, you're too dry. That's a lot of it. Humidity and temperature play a role in seed sprouting. You said you winter stratified them. Did you crack them? Are they a hard seed? Different things need to be processed by an animal before the right biology is mixed in to have those seeds sprout. That's where the chicken manure is so important, or you see such growth from areas where you've added chicken manure. So seed starting is very particular to some seeds, but the strawberries, like Susan said, take some strawberries from the store, stick them in the soil, you're more than likely going to get strawberry plants.
Yeah, you can take just the tops off your strawberries that you eat.
Yep.
Let them dry out and plant them. You'll have bumper crops of plants. Okra seed are one that you need to soak. I'm trying to think off the top of my head, but okra seed is one that you would need to soak in order for it to germinate. And I know some seed need to be cold stratified, like lavender. I have no luck with lavender. I have planted it in sandy soil. I've planted it in clay soil, and no luck.
Mm-hmm. I don't know that I've ever tried to grow lavender. But then I was actually a truck driver for 20 years and got totally away from gardening altogether. And now being injured, etc., we're growing more, flowers, etc., because we don't eat a lot of greens ourselves. So we're more into the flowers because I want the honeybees, the pollinators to be happy. But it's what I have grown. I've grown indoors in an enclosed environment, and that's for my medicine. But the person that can take you to a next level is somebody that's been growing, the things you want to grow. That's why I tell people, listen to many voices, find people that resonate with you and what you're doing, what you're growing, and then listen to those. But always be open to listen to more people, because I've learned so much from conversations from a homesteader that was talking about, building their house, that, I got to go do this. And they talk a little bit about, planting these trees, and there's tricks and tips that they've experienced, just like Susan and her grandfather shared with her about different ways and methodologies. It's those gold nuggets that we need to search out and then share them like Susan and I do.
Right. And we need to keep sharing because, like I said, the younger generation behind us is going to need all of this information. They don't know. They literally do not know. We're raising a generation of, pardon my French, but dummies, because they're so absorbed in the video games and whatever else that they're doing that they're not really involved in what actual life is all about. And so I want to bring back the old skills to younger people so that they can learn from that. That's mainly what my channel is about. Learning to be thrifty, learning to preserve for yourself, learning to stand on your own 2 feet, pull yourself up by your bootstraps and carry on. Because listen, water doesn't always come in a plastic bottle. Sometimes you got to drink it out of the garden hose, you know, and now you got to watch the garden hose because some of them have latex in them.
Well, and lots of people, I wouldn't be doing that in the city where there's so much chlorine and chloramine and chemicals in that.
You don't want me to get talking about city water, but I will for just a minute.
Okay.
Y'all, they recycle water in the cities. That means your urine, your poo, and everything, your medications and all are getting filtered. And it's all going to a big, massive plant to filter the water. But what they're not telling you about what is coming out of your tap, even though they do water quality tests and stuff, is you're still getting remnants of your urine, your poop, your medications or somebody else's medications. And then they're putting the chlorine in the water. And they're putting, what is that, fluoride in the water.
Yep.
And all these things. And you're drinking it thinking it's okay.
Well, and we understand, or most of us understand, that what they tell us is safe for us isn't necessarily the truth. And, they're doing all these things supposedly for our health, but it's a lot of the things that we're consuming are harming us and just feeding the money complex that is the pharmaceuticals, the medical, these organizations and groups. And I don't want to get into that because that's not what we're here to talk about. But being aware that not everything that is in your store is actually good for you to eat, or in your tap, or what is offered to you. Just be aware of those things and then make your own choices in your own life for what you're going to accept for, consuming these things that may be harmful to your body.
Yeah, heavy metals is another thing that's in there. Thank you for mentioning that hillbilly herb. What I wanted to tell you was, we have aquifer water, which means our water is filtered through layers and layers and layers of rock and silt and sand. And by the time it gets down into that basin, it's purified. It's pure water. And so when we pipe it up through our well system, we're getting good quality water that still has live organisms in it. So we're getting the good stuff. But there's a lot of places that don't have good, clean drinking water. And if I was living in a city, I think I would be buying a Berkey or something to filter my water again. I'm no longer in the city, but that's what I would be doing.
I've actually watched people take a branch and have it gravity fed, so they bend it over, loop it, have a jar of water on top, and then a glass underneath, and they actually suck the water through the cells of the tree branch into the bottom glass to purify their water.
Right.
It's easy to do if you want to take the time to do it, or you care about doing it. And that's the problem. Most people don't even understand that there's a problem. And that's what Susan's talking about. That's what I'm talking about. So many other people on these platforms are talking about, trying to share that knowledge and understanding so you guys can be healthier. We can be healthier. Our plants, our animals, and our planet needs to get back to that nature before we do have more problems than are already affecting our planet now.
Absolutely. Welcome in, Rusty Nails. I don't think I caught you earlier, so thank you for coming in. We want a healthy planet because we have to live here, and we want to leave it in a better shape because our grandchildren have to live here.
I have no children, so I'm fighting for all the children and all the future generations. That's why I keep putting this out. That's why I keep coming on to these shows. I keep doing interviews and bringing different perspectives on, because it's all a teaching tool that the more people that understand the basics, we can change the world one garden at a time. And that's what we need to do. Right, Susan?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I got a question for you.
Please.
What would pull your corn up by the roots?
What would pull your corn up by the roots?
Yeah, I went out in my garden this morning and I had corn stalks laid over with the roots exposed.
It almost sounds like, was it something pushing up from underneath or something pulling from the top? Where are the marks on your plant?
There was no marks on the plant that I could see, and I couldn't see anywhere where it was being pushed up.
Okay, was there a lot of root on the root ball?
Yeah.
Then, yeah, it would have to be something pulling. So you could have actually had, did you have storms go through? Because you could have what's called a microburst, where the actual,
we had rain. I don't know if we had any storms during the night.
Yeah, that if there's no marks on the plant of something pulling it up, it could literally be a microburst of air where the air pressure changes so fast it can actually literally pull plants out of the ground.
Wow. See, I learned something new today.
I almost lost a business that way, a concrete company. We almost lost the entire plant from a microburst.
Oh, wow. Well, I know that the ears of corn are still on there, so it wasn't a raccoon. So I was just really curious. And I don't know if I can replant it or not to try to save it.
You could try it. Just wash the roots off, soak them in something biological so that they're not dry, because you don't want them to dry out. And you can try replanting it. Whether it takes or not, that's going to be actually up to the plant itself and the biology that grows that plant.
Yeah, because it had ears on it. I was just really shocked to see it. Now, I've seen them knocked down by, storms and stuff, but I'd never seen that.
It's not something that happens very often, but if you don't see any marks of something pulling it up, you don't see anything where there's marks of it being dug up or pushed up by a groundhog or people call them different things, different places, gophers, etc., moles, then yeah, that's the only explanation that pops into my head, would be Mother Nature pulling it out of the ground.
Well, I'm going to have to go out there and check it after the live to see if I can save it. I'm like, what am I supposed to do with this? I looked at it and I was like, well, I've never had that happen.
Yep. Go give it to the chickens. Other than that, maybe we're gonna end it here pretty quick, guys. But Susan, are you? I know you do. Weekly shows. Every Wednesday you do a live stream. You do regular shows on your channel. Are you going out to any events or doing any more of these types of interviews that you'd like to mention?
I would love to do interviews on other people's channels. But I have a strict schedule. It's Monday through Friday, daytime only. My husband is home nights and weekends. We live in a double wide mobile home, sound travels. He likes to watch TV. I'm not going to interrupt that. He's been at work all day. So I have, parameters that I have to go by. But I would love to be interviewed on other channels. And if you're interested in being on my channel, shoot me an email. I've got openings. I'd love to have some channels come up. It's a great way to get your feet wet if you're a new channel.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Theresa, for coming in.
And that's the thing. Like I know, like in here in an hour and 15 minutes, I'm going to be on with Simply Jan Homesteading on her
get a break.
Yeah, I get a little bit of a break. And guys, I'm not simulcasting it onto It's All About the Biology channel. So you'll have to go to Simply Jane Homesteading on YouTube to be able to watch Jane interviewing me.
Yeah,
that's
Jane.
Have you been interviewed by Jane?
Jan? No, I haven't been interviewed by her, but she is one of my friends. You can either drop the word hillbilly or one of the moderators can drop Jan's link. That would be great.
Well, there's the link to the actual watch link, guys, that because the show's already been set up on her end. But I'll also throw it into the chat. Just I got to go to edit here first.
Yeah, make sure you go over there. That's going to be a great show. Jan is so personable.
Well, I know I had her on or I interviewed her here, I guess a couple of weeks ago now. And yeah, it was an amazing show. She really adds to the conversation.
Mad Dog, we love replay, so please do go replay that. If you want to email me, my email is thehillbillychickenranch@gmail.com. Easy. If you want to email me and you want to be a guest on my live on Wednesdays, it is at 9:55 a.m. Central Time.
Mm-hmm. Well, Susan, unless you have something else to add, I think we're going to say, thank everybody for coming.
Well, thank you very much for having me here.
Well, thanks for coming. It was a phenomenal conversation. I learned a lot of things I didn't know. That's one of the reasons I love doing interviews like this, because I get to learn from your experiences.
Well, I appreciate that, and I learn from you as well. I learn from everybody, all of our homesteading community, the gardening community. I learn something every day from y'all, and it's just so amazing. And we've had so many people come through this live today. I really do appreciate each and every one of you. I want y'all to know that I love you, but Jesus loves you more.
You bet, guys. So we're going to end it on that note. And guys, remember, an hour and 45 minutes, I'm back on with John. So see you guys then.
Thank you, everybody.